Hey, I think we'll get started, Bruce and Lauren, if you guys are ready. So a couple things, just housekeeping things. We are using Zoom, as you know. At the bottom of your screen, if you kind of hover over, there is a chat feature on Zoom. So feel free to add comments or questions that you might have for us today. You can use that. You can also let us know if you have questions, and we'll work them in. So I want to first introduce myself. I'm Carol McCormick. I am the president of Greenbax Marketplace. It is my privilege and really I'm excited to be here today with Bruce Anderson, who is a CPA with BTA. That's his company. And we talked a little bit about Bruce's company here in a minute. And then Lauren Murphy, who is my director of strategic initiatives for Greenbacks. And Lauren is our in-house payments expert and has been the driving force behind our new product, Merchant Pay. And so she's going to speak a little bit about that as well. So let me talk to you guys about Bruce. So part of Greenbacks, the marketplace part of our name, is that we have partnered with other experts in a variety of industries. In Bruce's case, he's a CPA. And what we've tried to do under our marketplace is to find good referral partners who bring knowledge and needed expertise to our customers. So obviously we're not CPAs, but we know you all need them. And so we were really excited to introduce Bruce Anderson to you and his firm. And his firm has been in business since 1984. They started working with cannabis operators as soon as it became legal in California. Bruce is located in Southern California, but is able to serve operators across the country. And his company provides personal and business tax preparation, tax resolution, compliance, tax planning, accounting, bookkeeping. He has served and has people on his team that can serve as outsourced CFO or a controller. And then around the cannabis, they have helped customers get licensed and all the compliance related around starting a new cannabis operation. So he has really a deep understanding of our space, and I'm excited to introduce him to you today. This is the first of webinars that we will do all throughout next year on topics that I think will be of interest to you. Today, we really want to talk about kind of getting ready for year end and what does that mean as you're thinking about, we're middle of December, getting ready for 2025. So Bruce says year-end activities and year-end wrap-up start in January. So Bruce, why don't we talk about what are some helpful hints that people could start thinking about to get ready for next year, for wrapping up this year successfully and looking forward to 2025?
Okay, perfect. Carol, thanks so much. And thanks for inviting me to this. I think it'll be a very worthwhile arrangement that we have between our two firms. The banking has always been just a terrible thing, which is not resolved yet. And so therefore we'll get more into that later. But with regards to the year-end planning kind of situation, it's very different with cannabis because we have this 280E lurking over our heads. And so therefore, to do certain types of planning and budgeting around all of the expenses that you typically would find in a non-cannabis business, you don't have that same kind of situation with the cannabis space. The focus should be on cost of goods sold and managing inventory, things of that nature. And so, to kind of give you a kind of quick checklist, typically I take a look at a balance sheet, and as current as that balance sheet may be, we kind of run down through the components of it. So first of all, do you have a good balance of your cash? Because that's going to allow us then to deploy extra money that can be part of the arrangement to draw down your taxable income situation. Next piece is going to be with regards to inventory. And inventory is kind of catchy because a lot of people say, well, I'll just go ahead and go out and buy some more inventory. Well, the problem is that you have an interface between balance sheet, profit and loss statement. So therefore, if you buy more inventory and you haven't sold it, it didn't do you any good tax-wise. So therefore, make sure you spend money appropriately that's going to impact your your bottom line tax situation at this point. Fixed assets are very important. A lot of times, or I fixed my piece of equipment versus I bought a new one. And so therefore that's a consideration that's very worthwhile to make sure we have an understanding of. And on the liability side, there's a variety of caveats there that are driven by the business. And I don't want to spend a lot of time with those at this point, but the whole balance sheet is important to have an understanding of it. The next piece, which is always the biggie, is the P&L, which is where your taxation comes from. And what happens is that we have kind of an odd arrangement with regards to the way in which taxation is managed for the cannabis company. It isn't your net bottom line. Go to the bottom of the page, and that's what your page 1 of your business tax return. That's what you're going to calculate taxes on. Oh no! It's way up the top part of the tax return, and so that's sales less cost of goods sold. So your emphasis should be cost of goods sold kinds of things. Big component can be what you're paying your people. So therefore, a lot of times there'll be bonuses should you pay them in December or January. That's a consideration. It's very important. There's other types of expenses that will go into that cost of goods sold area that will impact bottom line tax situation as well. And so that's stuff that should also have some good understanding so that you're spending your money appropriately to draw down your tax situation. And at that, I'll take a break.
Yeah. So, Bruce, I mean, you've touched just briefly on the whole question of 280E, which we're always seeing headlines and questions about. Are there any nuggets of that might be helpful to our customers in the thinking about? Are there any applications for 280E for them?
Well, so the discussions I love to hear is to go to a place, and at this stage, it still slays me where you have a cannabis activity, and you think, well, we're gonna smoke weed or whatever, and it's no, you go drink beer, So I always am mystified about how that works, but be that as it may, you go to the bar and you talk about what's happening with your business activity, and so the 280E will fit differently with the different parts of the business. So if you're in a situation where you're either growing things as a cultivator, making things as a manufacturer, then that really treats 280E much better because we have lots of more things that we can write off. If you're on the selling side of things, either distro or retail, you get really beat up by 280E because officially, without having any creativity at all you get for costs are the cost to resell the product. So therefore, if you're distro, what'd you pay for the product that you're going to sell to the retailer? If you're a retailer, what is the cost to sell product to the consumer? But there's a code section 471C, which if appropriately applied, this is a new code section from 2018. If it's applied correctly, then you end up having the ability to allocate more costs into the cost of goods sold area and dramatically change your tax situation.
Okay, so that sounds like something that could be of real value to your customers. And there's
huge.
Take a look at that. Okay,
yes,
that's great. So those of you on this call today, if that piques your interest, we'll make sure that you have Bruce's contact information. And I should say that we will be sending a follow-up email to everybody who signed up and who participates today with a link to this recording, as well as contact information and a schedule for the next seminar, which we'll talk about at the end of this call today. Okay, so let's switch a little bit and talk about banking, since again, we appreciate the opportunity to bring this to you. I'm going to ask so one of the things that Bruce is really passionate about is helping startups, as is Greenbax Marketplace. A lot of banks don't want to give startups an opportunity. We have always wanted just to be good supporters of the industry, and so we do allow a brand new company, even sometimes before they've got their license, to start to qualify for a bank account and have the ability then to build out whatever they might need to build out. So Lauren, can you first kind of talk about how we attempt to be a really good banking partner, but what is it included in that, and what does Greenbax provide to our cannabis customers?
I think one of the just being in the industry for some time, joining the Greenbacks team, it seems like the marketplace piece of our name really is so that we can create referral partners for our merchants, such as BTA with Bruce. And so it's really being able to pull in different services, even just as their banking partner in general. We get asked, like, how can I set up payroll? How can I set up benefits? We do have all of those referrals that we work with. So I think it's beneficial to kind of introduce those different services. And then also outside of banking is just being able to collect payment is that it's very difficult within the cannabis industry, for sure on the consumer side, which that's what we help support with GBX Merchant Pay. But we also have a B2B side of things where we can enable you to request payment or auto debit from an existing business that you have a relationship with. So I think it's being able to provide all those traditional services that they're not used to.
Yeah, and one of the things that we require any of our customers know this, and this is part of being a compliant cannabis banking solution, is we have to ask for P&Ls every quarter. And so that's actually how we first met Bruce. One of our mutual customers was working with BTA because they needed to provide that to us. And just so everybody knows, that is how we have been able, for those that you may not know, we started this program within North Bay Credit Union. North Bay Credit Union owns Greenbax Marketplace. And we wanted to be able to offer our services to across the country. And so we spun Greenbax off as a standalone entity in order to be able to expand. But what we built at North Bay, we have continued to build on in terms of a compliant program. And the P&Ls really came out of all the years of working with our regulators and our auditors to be able to demonstrate that if we're going to take on this quote unquote risky, high risk business, that industry, that we would be able to demonstrate that we know who our customers are, we understand how they're making their money, and that the funds coming into the financial institution are legitimate cannabis sales in the states that have legalized it. So we built everything on that. And so that's how we got in touch with Bruce and started working together, and we're able to see the services that he provided to this mutual customer. Flipping that, Bruce also, when he runs across customers that he's working with in this space, often need a good banking partner. And so we've been the recipient of him sending customers our way. And so that's part of our referral. That is part of our marketplace. So Bruce, can you talk about, from your perspective, over the years of working with different banks and stuff, how would you describe what a good banking partner, and match that with a good CPA? Like what's the synergy and the magic there?
So the banking is a situation where the rules have to be well understood, so that when the relationship is established, it's understood how the money is going to be accounted for, how it's going to be managed with regards to validation of the deposits and the way in which the money is going to flow, just from a standpoint of there is a POS system in most parts of the industry. In some parts, there still isn't a good POS, kind of arrangement point of sale system as POS. But to understand how that is going to flow is very important. The bank wants to know that the deposits are coming from that licensed entity. The banks are not going to be happy with doing any black market kind of stuff. So that's kind of understood. We established ourselves early on as we're happy to do business with lots of people across the industry as long as they're licensed in their locality.
Sure.
And so what's going to happen routinely is the banks are going to say, prove that the deposits you're putting in the bank are coming from your legitimate legal business. And so therefore we have to, as accountants, make sure that we have a set of books set up that will capture that. If there's a point of sale, then either direct connect, for which Greenbax has done a very cool job at being able to have some of the primary POS providers being in a direct connect into their banking arrangement. So therefore, we try to do that on the backside as well, make sure that connects. Additionally, then the better point of sale systems will also manage inventory, but they don't do everything. You know, in the good old days, what would happen is there was still this feeling of there's got to be some mystique out there where the income is okay to be able to record, but oh my God, where is the product managed, and how about the inventory, and how's that managed, and so forth. Well, now the better systems, and especially driven by supply chain management with, for example, Metric is a system within California, then there's movement that has to be recorded by a state mandated system, this Metric, in order to make sure that you have good solid information coming through from there as well. So now it's interesting that that's a piece of an accounting system, but yet it's not incorporated into a complete P&L based system, such as a QuickBooks or Xero or whatever. And so therefore, the accounting system, we have to have arrangements on the backside to be able to capture that, either book it in as manual journal entries, automate as we can, so that we have that stuff available for us. And so that is going to be validated to the owner, but then available to the bank so that they in turn can increase lines of credit, be comfortable if they have a good banking relationship, and so forth. There's also the Smart Safe. Are you guys doing some work? Yeah. So Smart Safes are a very interesting tool which affects a lot of people in California and other far-reaching states, where the Smart Safe is such that you get cash because for whatever reason the cannabis industry is still based a lot on cash, even though banks are becoming more prevalent. But what happens is as soon as you put that money into the Smart Safe, it's going to be recorded to the banking institution, and you don't have to worry about a cash pickup every day in order for you to have that cash available. And so then it's a relationship between the customer and the bank as far as how much time you have as a provisional deposit. Sometimes it's a couple of weeks. I've seen longer than that. And so therefore, that's another tool that a lot of this is based upon trust. Can you rely on this machine that's going to provide an electronic deposit into the bank for which the bank doesn't have the money yet? Okay, so therefore, is there an arrangement that can be worked on? And sometimes the trust comes very, very quickly, and sometimes it takes a while to get that kind of up and going.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Smart Safe. So from our perspective, it is definitely about safety, right? So to your point, cash is still a big part. We pick up millions of dollars through our various armor car services across the country. And some of our larger customers do like to have the security of a Smart Safe because they can cut down on the cash pickups, but also just makes their environment safer. And we are able to work with them on provisional credit, and that has served us well and has served them well for sure. So I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about, Bruce, let's talk about startups. Like what, in case we've got new operators out there, like if 2024 is they're getting ready and maybe they just opened or they're getting ready to open in 2025, what are the kind of things around their financial getting stuff set up right? What advice would you give them to do it right from the beginning? Besides calling you, obviously, for an appointment. Besides that, what can they do internally?
Well, so it isn't just one industry. It's an industry built upon about 4 different major components: cultivation, manufacturing, distro, and retail. Some people have licenses that cover more than one of those areas. Sometimes they have just a particular license. They like retail, or they like whatever. But it's so important for us to understand what they have today and what they expect to have in the next year or two, because what we do is we build their system based upon where they are today and also have room for where they want to go tomorrow. So for example, right now, on a startup, we want to understand what part of the business they're in, because we're going to give them a standardized but custom chart of accounts that will allow them to be compliant not only within the industry in general, but also among their peers. So if you take a look at any of my cultivators, for example, we can lay out 3, 4, 5 of them, one against the other. You're going to be able to take a look at margins because they're consistent. The charts of account report consistently across all of those things and so forth. And that's something you just can't get out of the box. You have to have an understanding of how that particular area works. The other thing is that there are some standard subcomponents within cost of goods sold. It's interesting for me. I have a pretty heavy manufacturing background, and I came into this cannabis business, and these people are, oh my God, you can't believe, oh my God, you can't believe this chart of accounts thing. And I look at it and I go, well, it's like a manufacturing company. There's purchases, there's labor, direct labor, and there's other direct expenses. 3 major categories, manage them accordingly. And so what happens with a startup is that they have to have the components that fit them correctly. And the other problem is, for example, if you're in a retailer or a wholesale doing selling, then people want to understand what their markup is on the product. Okay? But markup on the product is what's needed from a managerial standpoint and from a standpoint of running your business and comparing yourselves to, are you covering your costs correctly and so forth? But it's terrible with regards to taxation. So therefore, what we do is we deploy the 3-piece cost of goods sold, but then we also provide them sets of standalone reporting, which then just carves out specifically purchases versus the sales. So they have the best of both worlds. The other thing we like to do is make sure that we encompass whatever the taxation rules are for that particular area. If you're a C corporation, then it's a flat 21% federal. If you're in various states like California, which do not comply with the 280E, they've uncoupled 280E. So then you have a different tax base for that as well. What we try to do is have that available on their monthly, quarterly P&Ls, so they're able to understand, did they make any money or not? Because if you don't include taxation, everybody's making a gazillion dollars. Everybody's a millionaire in the cannabis business. As soon as you overlay the income tax, then everybody's walking around with holes in their jeans. So it's important to understand, what that looks like, because it is repairable, manageable, if you know what you're up against as you're passing through the year.
Thank you. So let's switch a little bit. So Lauren and I were, and Bruce was as well, we were at MJ Biz last week. And what an event. I mean, I don't think I've walked that much since last MJ Biz, but but it was great. We were able to meet with a lot of our partners and really it was a great opportunity. But one of the things that happened when we were there is that we heard another cashless ATM provider turned off again, which means that our dispensary clients who use that service all of a sudden had no backup or back to cash, right? More cash. Yeah. So Lauren, can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing on the payment side and our solution around that, and anything that you want to just kind of talk about in general around the payment side of the cannabis business?
Yeah, I guess payments is the most volatile thing in cannabis. Everyone wants to accept electronic payments, but it's very difficult to. And obviously cash, everyone goes back to cash. Cash is where everything started. For the solutions that are going down, I mean, it definitely makes sense why dispensaries and deliveries are accepting it, because it's such a normal customer behavior to use a card. Where everyone is feeling the pain is when those transactions get shut down because the portfolio of transactions are too big. There's too many eyes on it. most of those are being run on an ATM network. And either maybe there was a handshake deal that the transactions could happen, but then, like I said, if there's too much eyes on it, or Visa, MasterCard happen to own the ATM network, they do get shut down, which hurts the business and creates a really bad customer experience. I think for payments in the cannabis space for a long time, it will always come back to ACH and cash are the most reliable and compliant payment solutions within the space. So that's why we did launch GBX Merchant Pay. We've tried to make the customer experience as seamless as possible, cutting out certain steps that aren't necessary because you always want to have reduced friction points there. But yeah, ACH and cash are primarily the most reliable solutions for customers and businesses to use.
Thank you. So Bruce, let's pop back to you. You want to talk about sort of getting ready for next year. One of the things that you talked about making closing in January easier. So what goes into for customers wanting to kind of get prepared? What should they be thinking about? What should they be pulling together? What would your suggestions be?
Well, it's fascinating where people think this year-end closing is just this mystical thing that happens once a year, and very frankly, it's just another month-end close. And so now the question becomes: are the procedures within the company such that they are into a monthly closing process? Are they kind of like not quite to monthly, or they kind of like the quarterly? There's a lot of discipline it takes to run really a high quality set of books. And so therefore it sometimes is a little bit of a tug of war, because many times the owners don't see the value in having a more up-to-date set of books. So what we do is we kind of put that all on the shelf and we say, okay, let's make it really easy. You're now to almost the middle of the month of the 11th month of the year. Let's go ahead and take the end of November and pretend that that's a year end. So let's do a year end closing through 11 months. If you're able to do that process, lots of things come out of it. It tells you that maybe your procedures are not as tight as they should be. So that gives you a chance, like a whole month, basically, to document your procedures so they get a little tighter. It also gives you a chance to see, oh my God, my such and such didn't post correctly. Maybe it's a point of sale had a glitch. We've had Dutchie last summer on the 19th of July, they cut over on their system, and they told everybody in the beginning of the month, you have to be sure to make your backups and so forth. Well, I had a company that basically was sold and transitioned from one company to another the end of June and didn't get the message. And so therefore I'm sitting at July 19th, July 20th, July 21st, and my numbers go from numbers in 19th to 0 on the 20th with no explanation. So therefore, now we're at the 11th month of the year, and now you can test those things out. You can make sure you've got good accountability. You can bring your year-to-date scheduling up to date through 11 months. You can see if you've got any hiccups, gaps of any type and whatever. And so now what happens is you've got really a good set of records that you can plan your last month on. Should we spend some more money? Do we get that upgraded piece of equipment? I talked to a guy yesterday. It's so funny. He's really a high quality, super efficient guy. And we're going through his balance sheet, and he goes, look at this $18,000 piece of equipment. And I said, well, what's that for? Oh, that's for a pre-roll machine. A pre-roll machine. He says, yeah, but it's so old, I think we ought to just trash it. Well, how old is it? 2 years. A 2-year-old piece of equipment that he hasn't used other than 2 months, and he found out it wasn't worth much. And yet that's the kind of things that we now have that as available to write off this year. And we wouldn't have had that if we would have done this activity in January, February. So now what happens is we do this really detailed closing process in November. Now we roll through the end of the year, we pay our bonuses in the proper month, we buy the equipment we need, we make sure our inventory is correct, so on and so forth. And now we're into January, and guess what? All we have is a 1 month close because we have 11 months already under our belt. So it's a very good tool to just square up and pay for all the sins that you didn't take care of during the course of the year.
So Bruce, we've noticed over our time of offering cannabis banking that I would say 90+% of our customers use some version of QuickBooks, whether it's online, desktop, enterprise. Is that your experience? And I heard you say zero before. Do you have do you have a favorite or a recommendation, or are you agnostic to the systems that our cannabis operators would choose?
So 2 parts to the answer. One is we've been QuickBooks people for, since the beginning, since last century, in fact. And at one point, you had to go through me to get certified with Enterprise because I had prepared. It was the goofiest thing in the world, where not only did I prepare the materials for 2 parts of a 6-part exam, but then you had to listen to me drone on for an hour for each of these 2 sections in order to be certified. I still look back at that and just giggle. But it's the platform. So therefore, with QuickBooks, they teach it in schools. They teach it in high school, junior high, junior colleges, all that stuff. So therefore, if you're on QuickBooks, you probably can find somebody without a high price to assist you in your bookkeeping stuff in-house. Okay. Secondarily, then you've got a Zero, which has always been out there, but it isn't as strong. It is a fine product, and there's probably 2 or 3 others that are out there, but it's not something that is well known, and so it's not as well supported and so forth. But then from a standpoint of just, how do you manage your books and so forth, if you have somebody in-house that can assist with that, it's really a superior arrangement than having absolutely everything outsourced, because there's just so much stuff that happens on a daily basis within a cannabis company that requires a lot more hands-on kind of work in order to get that work done.
So is that like the perfect scenario in your experience, where the cannabis company would have their own bookkeeper doing the daily stuff and then kind of partner with you on the bigger picture and the strategy and the taxes and all that? Is that what works best in your view?
There are people that have, from the accounting professional side of things, there are some that say, you do it my way or the highway. I only do it if you do ... I only do your bookkeeping accounting if you let me do ... And the problem is everybody's a little different. We've been in business a long time. What we do is we basically start with a blank sheet of paper, and then we list out the types of things that make a good accounting system, and we say, are you doing it or are we doing it? And at the end of that discussion, then we determine if it is something that we need to supplement bookkeeping, or if that's something that they can have and work with. We feel that our best value is providing training so that they're better, and then jump right into the financial statement stuff, because we feel that the industry itself is not complex. It just requires a lot of detailed attention. And so therefore we're comfortable doing higher level work, but if we need to get somebody going and so forth, we're happy to do that, transition somebody local for them to pick up the slack and move forward with.
Okay, so it sounds like when you talk about a blank sheet of paper, it's almost like, this is my word, not yours, but like a menu where they can choose where they really need to plug you in. And it sounds like you're flexible to kind of create a program for them that suits where they are in their life cycle. And if they've got in-house versus they don't have any help, you can help plug some of those resources in as well as needed.
Yes, and the thing that I'm absolutely surprised about is that as we become more and more automated, we expect that we have less to do with regards to anything with that term of reconciliation associated with it. And so therefore, if the bank connects to the QuickBooks, then what else is there? It's like, well, you didn't test it out to see if it's double posted. I had a guy the other day had a bad process of a credit card come through to me. So I in turn sent him out another invoice, put a $25 charge on top of it to say, you screwed up, so now you owe me a little bit more. What did he do? He paid the $25. So I'm still short the actual amount of the service that I'm supposed to be getting paid for. So now I have to go back on. But again, that's just basic. Is somebody doing the reconciliation work? And so therefore, there is that element where whoever writes a check should reconcile the checks. Yeah. Whoever is responsible for managing the bank account should be the one to reconcile. So that's where it works out nicely for us to come in and be able to do that reconciliation. Yeah. But yet we also have to identify on that blank sheet of paper that there's somebody that needs to be processing. So therefore, some people say, well, there's no processing involved because it's all automated. It's like, well, there is processing involved, because how did it get to the point, you flipped your credit card down at the hydroponics store to get some more whatever. So shouldn't that transaction be recorded in a set of books? So then when it comes through the bank and that charge comes through, it's the right amount. That the hydroponics store didn't use your credit card twice. It's always great to say, oh, I really give you a good deal. I'm charging double retail. Is that good? It's like, well, not really. But if you don't get caught, that's a great deal for the hydroponics store.
Yeah, reconciliation. I mean, I would say I'm glad you brought that up. We definitely, on the banking side, really want our accounts to look at their account often, at least reconcile at least monthly, because mistakes do happen. Whether it is we've seen this, somebody sets up an automatic debit, right? So maybe they set up a car payment, whatever, insurance, but then maybe that changes, but they don't make sure that debit isn't continuing. And all of a sudden, a few months later, wait a minute, that's still been taken out. And it's harder to unravel those things. There are rules around payments in particular. So it's really important, that reconciliation. And I think having another set of eyes from a CPA firm, making sure that everything is reconciled, is huge. We have seen there's a lot of fraud. I think we all read about that. Where most of the fraud has been hitting financial institutions is really around old-fashioned checks. And it's funny, a lot of the platforms, a lot of what are considered fintech platforms out there don't even offer checks anymore because of the fraud. And so I think it was either Target or Walmart. One of them has said no more checks. I mean, we're starting, and there's a lot of news lately how checks are gonna disappear. And part of that is because of the electronic payments, things like Greenbax Merchant Pay. But our accounts over the years have continued to be big check users. It's something that we do offer and will continue to offer. But it is absolutely incumbent that people double check that what's coming through is what they wrote it for, what they expected, because technology has allowed the bad people out there to use technology to make the checks look like they're real, including fake signatures that look right. And so it's the scariest part, and it's a really hard thing to manage because everything's electronic. And so I think reconciling, we can't say it enough. And if you don't have if a customer doesn't have the ability internally to do that, that would be definitely worth partnering with Bruce and his company to make sure that you do reconcile, because you will lose money and you can protect your company by doing that. We've seen it firsthand. So I can't support that enough.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're talking about reconciliation is absolutely important, but Bruce, in our past conversations at MJ BizCon, I was super excited to hear, as a former business owner, that just how I don't really think about a CPA tax firm as helping your business grow, but I feel like, especially for startups and even just existing businesses that have been in business for years, Could you explain how you work with businesses to help them grow and identify their inefficiencies? You kind of explained that on the year end, but just in general as your service that you provide
Like
to
from a strategy
customers.
standpoint,
Yeah.
strategy and planning, yeah.
So the so I come from a cost accounting background, okay, which is very unusual for CPAs. Typical CPA is somebody who goes to college, sits in a CPA firm, gets their CPA certificate, and they're so excited about doing financial statements, balance sheets, P&Ls. They love those to death. The problem is they aren't worth a whole lot to the operator. Okay, my background is cost accounting. I was with a Fortune 5 company that made plastics. So I always, get flashbacks at Dustin Hoffman talking about, when he graduated from college and plastics is where it's going. But it's fascinating because, when you talk about what do things cost and are you able to develop those kinds of metrics, a lot of times what we will do is say, okay, this is the basics that your bank will want, which is a balance sheet and P&L. But now let's talk about how you should be able to run your business. And so we like the idea of KPIs, key performance indicators, and we have different groups of KPIs based upon what part of the industry you're in. So if you're in a retail shop, then it's, you can do some things such as how long is the customer in your shop for, what's the average basket size. A lot of people talk about things of that nature. If you're in the cultivation side, then it's, what's your canopy size, what kind of yield do you get, so on and so forth. I was talking to a guy yesterday who says, I'm really backed up. I've got 250 pounds of product, but I can't get it sold between now and the end of the year because the market's off and so forth. But yet my yield is much higher on that product than it was the prior two harvests. And so therefore it's a matter of providing that set of management reports and talking face to face with your client so that we're able to discuss what's happening with that business activity. It's quite fascinating where I've been in business long enough to know that if I have a good operator, and it doesn't matter if it's cannabis, non-cannabis, I'm never going to contest what he or she thinks about whatever the industry is doing or whatever. Where my value add is, look what the numbers show. What do you see? And when I show them to the client and they say, oh, what I see is this, and it ends up guiding me into, oh, they look at this kind of stuff, but not that kind of stuff. And so therefore it becomes more of a real tight bond where I can continue to ratchet into the types of information that they really like to see and they gravitate to. And I try to have 2 or 3 things, and I have them in my back pocket before I ever start a meeting with them, that I think are things that they can action immediately upon having the conclusion of the meeting. So I'm going to give them the standard balance sheet P&L. I'm going to give them what I think are a set of KPIs that go with their section of the industry. And then I'm going to have my interpretation, but I'm going to hold my interpretation back until I let them talk to me about what there is. And I'm going to say, how about these 2 or 3 things that then hopefully will become actionable for them?
Did that answer your question, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I was super jazzed when you were explaining it to us previously, but I think it's definitely a valuable service that you offer beyond just CPA and tax.
So, Bruce, really recently there's been a bunch of headlines in California around tax payments and maybe the tax authorities cracking down a little bit, and I don't know if the payment programs have gone away or it just feels like there's been a lot of pressure on our operators, specifically in California. Maybe this is happening other places as well. How could BTA help with those kinds of things? Like what would be an approach if someone is sitting on a large tax bill? Do you help set up payment programs? Like have you seen that happen with some of your clients?
Sure. So the first piece is with regards to the actual audit activities that occur. I've been involved in just a few federal cases, IRS type cases, and been brought in on a couple because they were QuickBooks related and they couldn't understand what the QuickBooks was telling them. Yeah. But primarily, the work is done at the state and local level, and so it's a matter of helping them conduct the engagement itself. It's best if we can just take it off their shoulders and say, we're going to be point of contact, we'll keep you informed. But then if we're flipping the storyline to the audit's done and now they got tax notices, then that's where it helps to have somebody that's a third party deal with them, and especially somebody that does this for a living, because we're kind of disengaged from it. You know, it's not a personal thing. I'm not going to lose my firstborn because I didn't pay my taxes. And so therefore we assist in the negotiations for whatever kind of offering that can be made. Typically we take a look at all the taxes that are owed across any kind of a tax agency arrangement, prioritize those correctly. And then there's a lot of behind the scenes, and I'm not going to say it's a good old boys club kind of thing, but there's just things that are important to understand that the tax agency, whatever one it may be, has certain rules that they abide by in order for them to be able to offer a payment plan of any type. And so what happens a lot of times, which is, you know, the biggest thing to deal with these days, is really the federal income tax. And so there's a particular procedure that has to be understood. You just can't, and the other thing is that you kind of manage your cash for tax payments is kind of like a war chest. You know, in the good old days we talk about, oh, if somebody's going to go bankrupt, make sure you have that war chest set aside so you can live through the next whatever number of months. It's the same with regards to the situation where we've got these horrendous taxes because of 280E. And so therefore, don't just say, oh, I've got a little bit of money, let me throw it at the current period. That's just a terrible arrangement. And so it's really a communication that you have to have both with your client as well as the tax authorities. And it's really prioritizing what of the tax authorities will deal with you on a particular different arrangement. State on franchise tax board, they don't want to hear anything more than a year. Federal can go off 5-6 years, depending upon how much it is, and then how much additional documentation you need, and so forth. So there's a particular plan that you can execute on literally every one of these different tax agencies, and hopefully you don't have too many hitting you in the face at the same time.
Right. So if somebody is facing a big tax burden, it sounds like it can be beneficial to have you kind of in the middle. I heard you say you don't want to say good old boys club, which I appreciate as not a good old boy, but I would like to understand, are you saying that there are relationships that someone like you could have with a tax authority that helps cut through some of the bureaucracy and might be able to help a client get something in place as opposed to them going directly and trying to figure out how to navigate it? Have you done that and seen that?
Sure. So the long and short of it is different agencies have different procedures to follow. Are they written down? Maybe, but maybe not. Is it very consistent where you can jump ahead of the line? Probably not. But as far as coming to my firm and basically establishing a relationship and establishing the pattern in which we have to follow is something we can definitely help with. And the other thing which is interesting is these are planning things, which which is difficult because, you know, we're short of cash in the industry anyway. You know, what are we going to do? Pay our tax bill? Or are we going to pay our people?
Right.
And now you have the situation which may run 6 or 9 months ahead that you have to be planning for and managing in order to be ready to have that discussion and lay out the first amount of money for these tax bills.
Yeah.
So it's you know, so last year's tax bill, okay, so we just finished up 2023 taxes. You got a tax bill. When should you start making payments? Well, you can't make payments until you're current. Have you been doing estimated tax payments? What are those? Okay, well, we have to go through that process. Okay, so now when do you think that you would be ready to be doing your 2024 taxes? If you get over the hump of now you're into April, May, June of next year, and you want to start thinking about what to do about 2023, now you've missed an estimated payment quarter or two, and you have another tax return to do. So I mean, it just keeps coming at you.
Yeah, it definitely snowballs. Okay, that makes sense. I just want to take a moment and let everybody know we're getting close to the end of this webinar. And if anybody has any questions for Bruce or for Lauren or for me, you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and we're happy to field some questions if there's something that we can help with or add some more clarity to. So please take advantage of that. And I think, Bruce, as we're kind of getting ready to wrap up, what last thoughts do you have for people thinking about, okay, it is December, it's almost the middle of December, right? Christmas is just around the corner and it's the end of the year. What would be the most important thing they could be thinking about to try to close out the year as successfully as possible from being prepared for taxes and all of that?
How much cash you have. Number two, take a look to see what your net bottom line income or loss is, and don't get confused by looking at the bottom of the P&L. Take a look at that gross profit level, because that's what your federal tax line is going to be based upon. And then make sure you don't just blow through all your money before the end of December, because there may be some important things like payroll taxes for the fourth quarter due January 15th. So make sure you keep in line with some budgeting associated with this activity as well.
Lauren, if somebody out there wants to know more about GBX Merchant Pay and the value for them, how could they get information about that, and what would be a starting point if they wanted to start using that solution?
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen real quick so we have this beautiful picture that our marketing team created. I'm assuming you see that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So that kind of goes along with what you're asking. So we're going to follow up with an email with our contact information. If you do want to sign up for GBX Merchant Pay, whether it's for business-to-business transactions or consumer, we can get your application out to you. It's an online application that we have. If you want to set up a demo, my contact information will be in that email, and I'm happy to do that and set it up anytime.
Thank you. And Bruce, what final thoughts, words of advice do you have for everybody listening?
Well, for sure, you want to go out and buy weed before the end of December, because the retail market's a little bit soft right now. So make sure you don't go into the new year with no weed in your back pocket. And on a more serious basis, you know, the industry is a fascinating industry. It has a purpose. You just have to tighten up things all the way around to get through these lean times.
Right, and let's, for everybody to kind of go along with what Lauren has on the screen, the next webinar will be Wednesday, January 22nd. And some of the highlights that Bruce will be addressing then, and I'm going to ask him to just do a quick little description. So Form 8300 year-end reports are due on January 31st. Just for anybody who may not be familiar with that form, can you just give a little bit of a tidbit of what that is and what does it mean to be ready and prepared by January?
Sure. So I've completed two 8300 audits this past year, and it was pretty interesting because I thought I had it down pretty pat, but the long and the short of it is the 8300 requires a report to go out to anybody that you have as a name on part 1 or part 2 of the 8300, either the company that you got the cash from or the person who gave you the cash. And that has to be done by the 31st of January. There is a fine penalty for any of those you miss. And that's for that $10,000 or more payment arrangement. So it's important that those are well managed. And if you miss any during the year, make sure you pick them up, get them cleaned up, and get that information out so that you're buttoned up for 2024 by the end of January.
Thank you.
Hold on, I see that I'm trying to look. Yeah, so the question, there's a question and answer part of this. It's not chat, so I'm trying to.
Oh, and then,
So Bruce, we have a question. Roxana would like to know more about the 471C that you mentioned early on. Can you talk about what that is?
so 471C is a tax provision started in 2018. It's not specific to cannabis. It has to do with better reporting on inventory. And so if you're in the, and again, I'm going to continue to rely on this, which is if you're on the selling side of the business, either distro or retail, you typically only have costs for the resale of your products. When you deploy 471C, now you can enhance that cost of goods sold deduction to include any inventory location, rent expense, any costs for managing your inventory, personnel that are associated with managing inventory, purchasing, selling, things of that nature. And it isn't any standard, here's a template to use. It's really on a company by company based upon what part of the business you're in, how much space you have allocated to inventory, and who's associated with that as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to wrap up with just a couple more things for next time. So we're going to talk about Form 8300, W-2s. That all has to happen in January, right? We're going to talk about year-end reports, both at the state and local level. And Bruce said January is where you square up the reporting and clean up for the year, right? So pretty good focus on January. What is Form 1099 NEC for subcontractors? How's that used?
So the 1099 NEC is for, and there are, several dozen 1099 forms. The NEC is anything that is paid to a person, not a business, and somebody not on W-2. So if you have a plumber that's an independent guy and his name is Ray, and he gives you a social security number on a W-9, then he gets a 1099 NEC. If you've got Spectrum Plumbing and it's a corporation, then there's no 1099 associated with it. But what happens is that the IRS wants to get all the information either from employees or people that in California they say should have been employees on a 1099 NEC. So they can tie those out to their tax returns when it's time to report. Okay, so next month on January 22nd, we'll dive into more of those details. Bruce, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and giving everybody some things to think about as we end up in 2024 and look forward to 2025. Lauren, thank you for all of your work and support of our customers through everything you do, but merchant pay is what we talked about today. So thank you for that. And thank you everybody for joining us. If there are other topics around CPA world or anything else from our referral partners, feel free to drop us a note and we will be happy to make sure we include that in our next webinar. But we do appreciate your time today very much, and we appreciate you being our customers, and we hope that this has added value to your day. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.